Egypt is leading among countries in the Middle East and North Africa in providing social protection programs, according to the recent World Bank report. The report, entitled Built to Include: Reimagining Social Protection in the Middle East and North Africa, sheds light on key factors that impact people's economic conditions in MENA. Egypt is among the few countries in the region that has built a shock-responsive system to deliver income support to vulnerable groups. The report highlights Egypt as a role model in the MENA region, whose cash transfer programs cover most of the poor. Egypt is a good example of countries that have increased coverage to more than half of the poorest 20% of their populations through a combination of increased funding, better targeting of the poor, and consolidation of programs into a single cost-effective cash transfer program, the Takaful and Karama program in Egypt. The Takaful and Karama program was launched in 2015 to support impoverished families with school-aged children, the elderly, and people with special needs in Upper Egypt. The report said that the government assistance benefits 25% of the poorest households in Egypt, and the country's social protection registries cover more than 50% of the population. The World Bank report stated that Egypt's food subsidy program is the largest in MENA. The bread subsidy program alone serves 72 million citizens, while the food ration cards cover more than 64 million people. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing our discussion with Dr. Batran. Now, Long Live Egypt Fund, along with many governmental initiatives, these are all charitable. This is charitable work, and we've broken records, 8 of them, for the Guinness World Book of Records, and these are definitely expenses and burdens on the state's budget. And at the same time, the Egyptian society, along with all the international community and other societies, are all suffering from economic difficulties. Everybody is talking about inflation. So how do we make sure that there's some sort of a balance? Because we can't cut off the charitable work, and we can't cut off these initiatives that Egyptians are in dire need of, and at the same time trying to help and deal with the inflation and economic woes that everybody's really feeling.
Okay, that is where civil society comes in. So the Tahya Masr Foundation is a civil society. So we as Egyptians, from all our various backgrounds, we have to pay our zakat, our ushur, if you will. We have to pay something back to our community for religious reasons and for societal reasons. So it is a burden on the Ministry of Social Solidarity, but it is not a burden on the people of Egypt. But again, with the inflation, with the economic strains of the world, with wars around, with the neighborhood that we are living in as Egyptians, it is not an easy balance. We can never agree totally on priorities. The government is doing what it can. The state of Egypt, with its civil society sector in general, Tahya Masr in particular, is doing what best it can. All of the supporters of the Tahya Masr are doing. So the questions of priorities is, we cannot all agree on priorities, but what we can agree on is that there are in Egypt enough people that are trying to reach out and help people that are less blessed. This is number one. Number two, you will not believe, but there is a certain microeconomic positive impact for social protection and financial endorsements of poorer families. Because when you inject cash in a closed society, in a village, for example, that doesn't have enough cash. They are working in agriculture and they don't have enough cash. So you are giving them support from outside the government, injecting support within their communities and societies. This cash is being spent by each and every member receiving it and family receiving it within again, the restraints for their daily life. So it's the butcher, if there is one, there is the supermarket or a small grocery shop. It's not a supermarket there. It's the tailor or the lady that helps the other ladies too. So it is injected within the communities. So the money, it's like it circulates within, it creates its microeconomy. So the more you inject in, yani if I talk about I come from the pyramids area and a rural part of the pyramids area. And the amount of injected cash that I calculated from social protection is about 15 million pounds per year, per month. So it's around 160, 170 million pounds per year. In the last 5 years, you have nearly reached 1 billion Egyptian pounds. And the 1 billion Egyptian pounds in 5 years, within a small amount of land, housing nearly 500,000 Egyptians, is a lot of cash. So you find grocery shops turning bigger, having better doors, better shelves. So the number of bakery shops around, for me it was totally unheard of 5-6 years ago. It was only one baker, the public baker, giving out the public Egyptian bread that is still there, by the way. But within our area, one big street, yani it's just cuts the area in half. You're talking about 9 bakers. So that's the microeconomy from within, all owned by young people and families from within. So this is the recipient of the money being injected, creating, going around a small stationery shop, a small, all of the requirements of a simple society and a growing society. So I believe that we might think that charity has no real economic impact, but from what I have seen hands-on on the ground, charity creates a microeconomic cycle that's amazing to look at, but given the right amount of time.
Yes. Given the right amount of time and the right amount of finances as well, so instead of just having the whole burden on a one foundation, the Long Live Egypt Foundation, or state-driven initiatives, how can we increase the involvement of the private sector within these initiatives, within the charitable work? There are obviously companies and multinationals that are participating, but how can we
And
really
there is a coalition. I'm sorry to jump in so quickly, but I got the answer very quickly. We have a coalition of civil society NGOs. So, and they work together with the Tahya Masr and together with, so you're talking about nearly, it started off by 30 NGOs. And mostly they are supported by the businesses. So it's a company that has created a foundation. Like, for example, the telecom companies, they all have foundations. And they are wealthy companies of the Egyptian people's money. So it's an Egyptian economy product. So they are Egyptian companies creating foundations and NGOs, cooperating together into supplying the government with what it requires from outside financials for the various sectors of development and of growth and of requirements from housing and so on and so forth. So this is one thing that is extremely important. Of course, inflation is a huge issue from the world, because you mentioned this. I don't want to seem like I'm sidestepping the question. There is an economic situation, and it's not an easy thing. But again, working together. So the coalition from 30, I believe now it has broken the 100 NGO number, along with the big one, the mother NGO, if you will, that has created the role model, which is the Tahya Masr Foundation. So the role model not of NGO work in Egypt, but of structured NGO work hand in hand with the government. I had a foundation since 2010 with my family, but the work that we want to work with the government. So, and the civil society in Egypt has been very active for over 100 years, ever since civil society was created. Egypt had civil society, but again, so the civil society, but going back then, the civil society started off by the royal family, if you will. So it was the government at the time. It's the state, not the government, the state. So when you have the state backing the NGO, the civil society, like now we have Tahya Masr being backed by the government. So it gave the role model for all of those other NGOs to fall in step, to take the role model and to really help more. And this creates the sustainability, the going on and on and on. And this falls in plan with the 2030 Sustainable Goals of Development of the international communities, so that our models could be taught and copied and repeated in our African neighbors and elsewhere in the world.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard it from Dr. Batran, a lot of work has been done for the 9 years that Long Live Egypt Foundation has been established for, and still a lot more needs to be done. And it's work not just that needs to be done by the government, but the civil societies, the private sector, and us as citizens as well. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Dr. Mail Batran, the economic and technology foresight expert. Dr. Batran, always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nara International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.